How do you find the perimeter of a rectangular walking track that is 9 feet wide and 12 feet long? In this lesson, you will learn how to find the perimeter of a rectangle by using area models. Let's review. We already know what a rectangle looks like, but it is defined as a quadrilateral with 4 right angles. The opposite sides are congruent and parallel. A square is also classified as a rectangle because it's a quadrilateral with 4 right angles, and its opposite sides are congruent and parallel. Here is a rectangle. The length is 4 yards and the width is 3 yards. To find the perimeter of this rectangle, we need to figure out the distance around the outside of the rectangle. We can do this by placing unit squares around the edge of the rectangle. Remember though, we need to find the distance around the rectangle, so we only need to count the outside edges. In our model, the length is 4 yards. We can show the length by placing 4 squares across the inside of the rectangle. Now we can do the same for our width of 3 yards. We need to place 3 squares down the inside of the rectangle. Because we are working with the perimeter of a rectangle, which has congruent and opposite sides, we need to also place 4 squares across the bottom of the rectangle and another 3 squares up the side opposite of our 3 yards. Counting the outer line segments of each square all the way around the rectangle, we see that we get a total of 14. Because the unit of measurement is yards, each line segment will represent 1 yard, so our perimeter in this example equals 14 yards. Students often confuse the difference between area and perimeter. Area is defined as the total space within a figure. This can be found by filling in the inside of a figure with the appropriate number of unit squares based on the given length and width, and then counting the total number of squares. Perimeter is the total distance around the outside of the figure. This can be done by counting the total number of outer line segments of squares around the figure. In this lesson, we will only focus on the perimeter of rectangles. So how do we find the perimeter of a rectangular walking track with a length of 12 feet and a width of 9 feet? We begin by placing unit squares representing each unit of length along the edge of the rectangle. In this example, one square will be 1 foot long and 1 foot wide. This means we can represent the length of 12 feet by placing 12 squares inside of the rectangle along the top of the rectangle that shows 12 feet. Next, we represent the width of 9 feet by placing a total of 9 squares along the 9 feet side of the rectangle. Now do the same with the remaining 2 sides of the rectangle. We know we do this because in a rectangle, the opposite sides are congruent and parallel. To find the perimeter, we need to count the outer line segments of the squares around the rectangle. When we count all of the line segments, we see that there are going to be 42 line segments around the outside of our rectangular walking track. This means that our perimeter of our track is 42 feet long. In this lesson, you have learned how to find the perimeter of a rectangle by using area models.